common question I get almost all the time is, where should I start if I want to become more mobile? Well, I decided to put together a routine that's not only effective, but it's also time efficient. It's key to remember that when we're building our mobility or we're doing mobility training, the goal is to be as strong as possible throughout our entire range of motion. By us building up strength and also improving our mobility, our chances of future injury will go down and our ability to move more freely will go up. And if you commit to doing this routine on a regular basis, your physical activity will go up, which your chances of feeling pain will go down. The first thing that we're going to be working into is called prone swimmers. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to find myself a nice room, hopefully not bumping into ash here. We're going to go on to our stomach. Being on our stomach, what we're going to focus on doing is getting into the Superman position, which is arms out in front, and we're going to keep it as high as possible throughout this entire range of motion. In this position, we're going to now stay tall and work our way backwards. Once we get to the point where we feel like we're running out of room, we are going to rotate the whole arm inwards until we can't do that anymore. Bend the elbow, place the back of the hand on the lower back. Now that being said, the higher you go on this back, the better. We're going to be accessing more and more internal rotation. So once we're in this position, we're going to lift, we're going to extend, we're going to rotate back to that front position. We're going to do about 5 repetitions. Do more if your shoulders can handle it, okay? The key here is to stay as high as possible, and we're going to move as slow as possible through this range of motion. And here we go. We're going to do one more for good measure. Couple things to consider when doing that exercise. It's completely okay if things pop and click as long as there's no symptoms with it. Popping and clicking is just the gliding of muscles, ligaments, and tendons across joints, and it shouldn't be fearful as long as there's no symptoms that follow, okay? Another thing is, if that's too easy, you can buy a $5 ankle weight, place it on each of your arms, and it's gonna make a world of a difference. Whew, I'm already out of breath. So the next thing that we're gonna move into is a wide stance rotation. You're going to spread your legs out about where you would do a sumo squat. You can point your toes in, out, however you feel comfortable. You're going to hinge at the hips, keeping the low back as flat as possible, because that's going to put the most tension through the groin and the hamstrings. You're going to reach for the ground, keeping as flat as possible once again. From this position, we're just going to rotate. Awesome. And if you're doing this right, you should feel at the top there, you almost have to use your hips to get that extra range of motion. I'm feeling it right through here. Awesome. So we're gonna do 10 each side. But once again, if you need to do more, do more. You need to make it harder. You can always put ankle weights around your wrist. But the key is to maintain that hip hinge, which will ultimately feel a lot of tension in the hamstrings and groin. One more. Whew. Next up, what we're going to be doing is the goblet squat. I'm going to grab a kettlebell to make this a little bit more challenging for me. but you don't necessarily need this. The reason why we call it a goblet squat is because you hold the weight like this, which kind of looks like a goblet. I like goblet squats a lot because we're placing weight in front of the body, which will allow the torso to be more upright, and we're allowed to feed the quad some more and the hips some more versus the lower back. There is nothing wrong with placing tension through the lower back. It's all about the dose makes the poison. I just like this one because a lot of times people are deconditioned, they lack the mobility, so this is the easiest way to get into that squat position. So we're gonna do about 10 repetitions. Once again, add more weight if it's easy, add more reps if it's easy. It doesn't have to be in front of you. You can always throw a backpack on. Make this mobility routine yours, okay? Just like that. I'm gonna go shoulder width apart, toes slightly facing out, down to the depth that you feel comfortable. If this is too hard for you, you can always grab a chair, do chair squats. One more for good measure. I always do rep ranges of 10 to 12, or ranges in general. It's not really good to be concrete. Sometimes you have more energy, sometimes you don't have as much energy, so it's always good to be flexible. The next thing that we're gonna do is the elephant walk, which is pretty great for the hamstrings. I'm gonna use this box for an example, but how we would start a good starting position for a elephant walk is find where your mobility ends. So I like people to reach for their toes. Let's say your tension ends here, where if you go any deeper, it's gonna feel super gruesome, way too much tension, right? This is the end range that I want you to be at. So I'm gonna mimic that here. Once I find that depth where my knees are slightly bent and I feel a lot of tension in my hamstrings, that is my starting position. In this position, all I'm going to do is extend one leg at a time. You should feel a big sensation through the hamstrings if you're at the proper depth. I'm gonna go a little bit lower. Eventually, you'll notice that you'll be able to do this, which will really open up your hamstrings. We're gonna do about, so as you can see, it's pretty easy. It's not a high intensity exercise. What we're gonna be doing is about 20 each side. Couple more each side. Awesome. So remember, the key is to find the proper stimulus for you. If 20 is too much, don't be afraid to do less or breaking into multiple sets, okay? The last thing that we're gonna be doing is a hip 90-90 with a fold and lift, okay? Go back here a little bit just to make sure I'm in the camera frame. So 90-90 is when the front leg is at 90 degrees and the back leg is at 90 degrees. This is the start position. Some of you might have issues and you have to lean out of it. If that's the case, just try to be your best, do your best to stay as tall as possible. Just being in this position, you are going to be improving your hips' ability to get into external rotation and internal rotation, okay? So being in this position, stay as tall as possible, kind of keeping that belly button above the pubic bone and slightly before it. You're gonna give yourself a big hug to get those hands out of the way, and you're gonna rock forward, feeling that tension build into that front leg. Once you get to the bottom position, think about pushing that front leg into the ground and bringing yourself upright again. That's half the exercise or half the rep. Next, we're going to unhinge, kick that foot off the ground, okay? So that is one repetition. fold, and then lift. What we're doing is we're loading external rotation, and then we're gonna be loading internal rotation in one exercise. That's why I absolutely love this movement. So we're gonna do 5 each side, okay? Here we go. So that was 1. You may notice that the back leg might not go as high as possible or as high at all. That's fine. That just means we're going to be working on the internal rotation. As long as you're trying to do it, that's what's going to be building that ability to do so. And another thing is this exercise can be very easy to cheat if you lean real forward or you lean away, which is fine. I always say there's constructive cheating when it comes to exercise. If by you leaning out of the exercise, it makes it more comfortable and you're able to do it, then do it. Over time, you can build back into that more upright position. So we got 5 on this side. Big hug, stretch, press. Awesome. And then we're going to pick up like this. Oof. You should feel it right in that side glute med area, the side of the butt. Oof, last one. Awesome. Now it's time to go up to the top again. Now, the key here is this. If one round, you're feeling good, you're ready to hit the day, you can stop there. You don't have to continue to do this. My suggestion is if you want to build strong and resilient hips, a good start would to probably do 2 to 3 rounds, but don't feel like you have to, right? You always want to meet your body where it's at, okay? So from the top, we're gonna go to those prone swimmers. Let me clear the way a little bit. Getting down into the position, staying as tall as possible or long as possible. Arms out in front, keep them as high as possible, and rotate, or at least abduct away from the body. Rotate in, bend, extend, rotate, sits up. A couple notes about that exercise that I just thought about is when you are rotating, rotate the whole arm. We can naturally do this to our hands. That's not what I'm looking for. Lock in that elbow, rotate the whole arm. That's how we get that internal external rotation of the shoulder. The reason why this exercise is so effective is 1, we're making the shoulder do all of the ranges of motion it's designed to do in one movement, but you're also laying on the ground where gravity is actively resisting you during the motion. So it's really good. And if it's too hard for you to do, don't be afraid to just get into the position and just hold with outstretched arms. That will tax the rotator cuff and strengthen it over time. All right, moving into the next thing, which is the wide stance rotation. He's just casually behind me. So once again, shoulder width, well, wider than shoulder width apart. Toe is pointing to where you want them. We're going to keep slight bend to the knees, Hinge at the hips as far back as you can. Chest meeting the ground. Arms straight out like this. We're gonna rotate and rotate. Almost done. Whew. Once again, you should be feeling it in the hamstrings, groin region. Of course, you're gonna feel it through the spine because you're rotating. Grabbing my kettlebell here. We're gonna be doing a goblet squat next. Once again, if this is too hard, you can always use a chair. You can also, this is an important note to make, is if you feel like your hips are taking on too much stress with the mobility routines or just with squatting in general, let's make sure that you're not just keeping your toes forward because that was the fitness law. You can point your toes out and it'll be much more comfortable and it's not detrimental to your knees at all. Now, also remember that if you need to make it easier, don't go as low as you want. Go a little bit, go about right here. If that's where discomfort starts, stay here. You don't have to go any lower, okay? Let's go ahead and hit this second set of goblet squats. Awesome. Oof. Now we're gonna go into the elephant walks. I'm going to use just my toes this time. But remember, we're going to have soft knees, hinge at the hips, far back as possible. Feeling that tension here, then reach. Find that position where you're at the most tension in that hamstring position. I'm gonna grab beneath my feet here, and then what we're gonna do is we're going to walk each leg out. Awesome. And what I would do is, now that I am touching the floor, I would actually stand on something. Actually, I'll do that right now to show you. So I'm gonna stand on some blocks here. Pretty dang cheap on Amazon, had them for years. I think they're a great investment. I'm gonna reach to that point where, ooh, there it is. And then I'm just gonna take my time. As you can see, when we do all these exercises, they're all active. There's not a lot of just hanging out in a particular position, because that is the key difference between mobility and flexibility. Flexibility is what can an outside force do to your body and put you in a particular position. Mobility is what can I do with my body and how can I access that position actively. Reach a little bit further. Couple more. Awesome. We're going to go right into the hip 90-90s. I should have noted this earlier, but if you had issues with getting into this position and you have access to a chair, what you can do is just sit in the chair, placing one ankle on top of the other knee, and that will put you in the very same position that we are here. You won't be able to do the internal rotation aspect of this, but that's okay. So we're here, staying tall as possible. We're going to rock forward. Awesome. And we're going to switch sides. You can always use your hands to support you as you come down, like I was just doing. Awesome. So that is 2 rounds of the morning mobility routine that you can do. We're gonna cut it right there. What you can do is you always can continue to do this routine for three rounds or so. My suggestion is don't go past 3 rounds. I'd rather you stick to 2 to 3 and just keep intensifying each one of these exercises by either doing more reps per round or adding external load to the exercise. This is a circumstance where more isn't necessarily better. Better is better. So making each of those repetitions more full of quality versus quantity would be key. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. I created this program or this quick mobility routine to help as many people as possible in a short amount of time. So once again, try to do this on a regular basis to get the most benefits from it. Peace.